Hello and welcome to the next module. We're going to be discussing the organization theme, which you well know is all about the people involved in the project and the structure of the project team. Now this module, as usual, builds on the foundation training. So we're assuming that you've done the foundation module already, ideally even sat and passed the foundation exam. Now, if that was a while ago, don't forget you can go back and review the foundation footage from that module, or at the very least, review chapter 7 alongside the foundation syllabus, ensuring you're comfortable with all of those stated learning objectives. Now, in this module, we're going to do a key concept recap of the organization theme, as well as look at the documents that relate to the theme, the management products, and the roles and responsibilities. So we know that Prince2 projects, or the Prince2 guidance, if you like, is based on a customer-supplier relationship. And in most projects, that's a fairly straightforward scenario. Now, in any environment or in any customer-supplier environment, there are in fact three key project interests. So we speak about the projects or the interests rather of the business, the users, and the suppliers. Now, the business or the customer ultimately is paying for the project. So they're going to be wanting to make sure that the financial aspects of the project are in check, that the benefits that the project is going to deliver will outweigh the investment, taking into consideration the risks that need to be taken. The users are concerned with the effectiveness of the project's product. Is it going to solve their problem? So the users are the ones who specify what needs they have in terms of functionality of the solution, as well as specifying the benefits that the project will deliver if the solution works as it is supposed to work. Now, the suppliers are responsible for designing, for building, for delivering the working solution according to the specifications of the users. So those are the three primary project interests: the business, the users, and the suppliers. You'll remember that we spoke about the 4 levels of management. So corporate program management, or the customer, refers to corporate if it's a standalone project, program management if the project is part of a program, or I suppose colloquially or collectively, either of those could be the customer. So that corporate program management or the customer, that level of management is outside of the project management team and represents the highest level of management to which any project level exceptions ultimately would need to go. The 3 levels of management that make up the project management team are the directing level, where we have the project board made up of the senior supplier, the senior user, and the executive. The managing level, predominantly, we have the project manager, and the delivering level, where the team manager exists. Now, the project management team structure we know is a temporary team structure. It exists as long as the project does, and it provides all members of the project management team with channels of communication. Each identified role will, of course, have an identified and defined role description, which will set out all of their responsibilities for their involvement in the project. Now, some of the roles can be combined or shared, and parts of the roles can even be delegated to other people to fulfill. But remember that accountability cannot be delegated. So that's the overview, if you like, of the team structure. Now, remember that this team is dynamic. In other words, it's not static. It changes. It can change on a stage-by-stage basis. In particular, those with the suppliers, the senior supplier, team managers, certainly on a stage-by-stage basis are likely to change, because as we go through the project, once the team manager has delivered a particular product and that product's over, and we need a new team manager to deliver the next products for the next stage. Obviously, in a smaller project, you might have the same team managers delivering one product after the other. But if it's a larger project, a construction project, for example, once the guys have come along and put in the windows, then that supplier, that team manager responsible for delivering the installed windows is gone, and we'll never see them again. Now, the dynamic nature of the team means that this team structure needs to be reviewed on a stage-by-stage basis. Now, you know that the project management team structure, the organogram, together with the roles, the role descriptions, and the communication management approach, those 3 artifacts, if you like, they reside in the project initiation documentation. And so on a stage-by-stage basis, as part of managing a stage boundary, and the activity is plan the next stage or plan the next management stage, when that first activity of the managing a stage boundary process takes place, that is the point at which the components of the project initiation documentation that relate to the organization theme are reviewed to ensure that they accurately reflect the needs of the project for the next management stage. Now, of course, we said that the roles that make up this team structure can, of course, be combined depending on the project environment. In the simplest set of circumstances, a minimum of 2 individuals, a minimum of 2 people are required to fulfill all of the project roles. But of course, you could have as many people as it takes. It could be dozens of people ultimately involved in the project over an extended period of time. But when we combine roles, we have to be cognizant and careful that we don't generate conflicts of interest. So the combining of roles is subject to the following constraints. Remember that the executive and the project manager roles can never be combined. In other words, the project manager can be given no decision-making authority or the ability to approve any of the management products, for example, that make up the PID at operating at the same level of management as the executive. And both the role of the executive and the role of the project manager are one-person roles. That means that they cannot be shared. We can't have 2 people effectively managing the project or 2 people acting as the executive. And this is because of the exclusive singular accountability that the executive has for overall success of the project and the accountability that the project manager has for the success of the project on a stage-by-stage basis. You'll also recall that accountability cannot be delegated, so the executive's accountability for project success cannot be delegated to someone else, but the executive can delegate some of their responsibilities to other members of the team from time to time. Importantly, project assurance roles cannot be carried out by the project manager, since they provide independent verification that aspects of project performance are as they are supposed to be, let's say. Equally, project assurance cannot be carried out by any member of the project support team. So that brings us to the management products. There's only one really to look at here that's defined anyway in Prince 2. That's our communication management approach. Now, we know that this document is created by the project manager during the initiating a project process. And as I've just said, will be updated on a stage-by-stage basis during the managing a stage boundary process as a result of the identification of new stakeholders and so on and so forth. Now, the purpose of the communication management approach is to describe the means and frequency of the communications that must take place during the project. And it will describe the means and frequency of communications not only of the project management team, but any communications that will need to take place with external stakeholders as well. And as such, it facilitates stakeholder engagement with this bi-directional flow of information. Let's go and have a look at the composition of the communication management approach in Appendix A. We'll be looking at entry A5. So we're looking at the composition of the documentation. Again, introduction, pretty straightforward. The communication procedure will define any communication methods to be used, okay? Now, any variance from corporate program management or the customer's standards will be highlighted and an explanation given as to why the variance exists. Tools and techniques refers to any communication tools to be used and any preference for techniques that may be used in each step of the process. So this might be, confirming that, email is the preferred way of communicating, for example, for the purposes of exchanging reports. That type of information here. Records defines what communication records will be required and where they will be stored. So again, this could be logging communications with external stakeholders, with members of the public, with government departments, for example, or perhaps, how we deal with confidential information. Reporting describes any reports on the communication process that are to be produced. The timing of communication activities states when formal communication activities are to be undertaken, such as at the end of a management stage, so our end stage reporting, end project reporting, and so on, including performance audits of the communication process itself. Our roles and responsibilities will describe who will be responsible for what aspects of the communication process. Stakeholder analysis. Now, this is carried out by the project manager as part of the initiating a project process. We'll physically look at the spectrum of stakeholders, identify, what's the current relationship, what's our desired relationship, what are the key messages that we need to exchange with these stakeholders. Information needs for each interested party. Now, this will include the information that each party needs to receive from the project, the information they will provide the project with, the means and the frequency and the format of those communications. So the communication management approach essentially spells out exactly how, for the duration of the project, we are going to communicate with each other, who communicates with who, in what format, and at what frequency. Now, importantly, I said in the initiating a project process, there's no communications log or comms register in Prince2, no stakeholder register that's built into this communication management approach with a stakeholder analysis. Now, just a quick point. Remember that the means and frequency of communication, such as the highlight report, is defined here. So the fact that the project manager needs to create a highlight report on a weekly basis and what it's going to contain will be defined in this communication management approach. But the frequency and format of the checkpoint report will not be in the communication management approach. That we'll find in the work package that we agree with the team manager. And that's because there's no standard reporting frequency and format for team managers. Some team managers may report on a daily basis by having a stand-up meeting in an agile environment. Some team managers may report on a bi-weekly basis by submitting information through some type of tool. Some other team managers might report weekly using a template for a checkpoint report that's approved by the project. So that might change on a work package by work package basis quite frequently, and to that extent is not defined in the strategy, as it's not a once-off overriding set of standards for work packages. So, but highlight reports most definitely, as with all of the other progress controls. So that leaves us then with a look, or needing to take a look at the roles and responsibilities and how or who is responsible for carrying out what with regards to the organization theme. Let's take a look at table 7.1 as we go through these. So with regards to appointing resources, remember, corporate program management of the customer appoint the executive. The executive then appoints the project manager and confirms the appointments of the balance of the project management team. Senior user is responsible for providing user resources and will define and verify all of the user requirements and expectations. The senior supplier is responsible for providing supplier resources and advising on technical aspects of the proposed products. Remember, your senior supplier is the technical voice on the project board. They should also be able to provide technical advice in non-technical language to the non-technical members of the project board. In particular, the executive, they've got a head for numbers. The senior user doesn't really understand the technicalities of the solution. They just know what they want it to do. And so that senior supplier, really, it's important when appointing someone, they must be able to communicate in non-tech talk to the non-technical members of the project board. The balance of the table, the project manager, of course, preparing the communication management approach, updating it on a stage-by-stage basis if required, will, of course, prepare the role descriptions and, importantly, plan and undertake that stakeholder engagement when the communication management approach is created. Team managers will obviously be responsible for managing their own team members and advise on project team members and stakeholder engagement for their own part in the project. Those are the most important roles and responsibilities from that table. It's not an exhaustive list by any stretch of the imagination, but don't forget, you need to know where you can source that information when you need it, and it's a good practice to remember those tables of responsibilities. Okay, well, that about wraps it up then for us for the organization theme. Take the time now to review the manual along with the practitioner syllabus. Ensure that you're comfortable with all of the learning objectives that were stipulated. Don't forget you can do the sample questions that relate to organization question. And don't forget, with the organization question in particular, for the scenario, there is additional information provided as well. Now, once you've done those questions, don't forget to watch the rationale videos, and they go through each question, providing an explanation why the answers are right or wrong, as well as providing some insight to the thinking behind the question. And there will be additional learning points covered in those rational videos. So really a good investment in your time to spend some time watching those. And once you've done that, then you can come back and join me for the next module.